When did your siblings' greed finally catch up to them? 3 years ago, I spent 18 months scraping together $145,000 to buy back the exact 40-acre cherry orchard in northern Michigan where my grandfather taught me how to work the earth. The man who took me in after my dad vanished, who taught me how to drive a stick shift, how to spot a coming storm, how to be a man of my word. Reclaiming his land felt like the ultimate tribute to his memory. Like an idiot, I showed my sister the preliminary escrow paperwork. I whispered my plans to her on my front porch. She hugged me and said he would be proud. 10 days later, I checked the county registry portal at 8:15 a.m. to track my closing status. The title had already cleared under her husband's LLC. She had secretly offered the sellers an extra 10 grand in cash to bypass my loan. My mom called me that night, her voice heavy with excuses. Just let her have the acreage. Her business is failing and she needs the passive income more than you need a hobby. I stood in my kitchen and watched my wife cry in frustration as I crossed my name off the loan documents. I told myself it was just dirt and trees, but I knew that was a lie I swallowed just to survive the week. So when the adjacent riverfront parcel, the exact spot where my grandfather built his first cabin, quietly went into pre-foreclosure last October, I moved in absolute silence. I hired a private broker, finalized the $82,000 purchase through a blind trust, and locked the original deed inside a steel safe at my downtown office. I didn't breathe a word to a single soul. Not my mom, not my best friend, not even my wife. She asked me why I was working so many overtime hours, why I was draining my personal saving. I sat down at the kitchen table and told her the truth. The last time I shared a dream that meant everything to me, I had to watch my sister pave over our family history while I stood by empty-handed. My wife squeezed my hand and never asked again. My sister's financial situation imploded 6 months later. Her commercial developers backed out of the orchard project, leaving her drowning in debt. She became obsessed with figuring out who bought the riverfront, knowing it was the only way to salvage her zoning permits. Every family group chat turned into an interrogation. Finally, during a tense mediation meeting with our family attorney, my sister made her move. She announced she was filing a preemptive civil claim against the anonymous buyer of the riverfront, citing historical family access rights. Then she looked dead at me with that same cold, familiar smirk. "I'm securing an injunction," she said. "I'm reserving that land for my recovery." That was the exact moment I understood. It was never about survival for her. It was about control. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the county courthouse. My sister sat at the plaintiff's table, shuffling her fraudulent surveys, oozing confidence. The judge asked the defense to state their claim to the property. I didn't say a word. I just unzipped my leather briefcase, pulled out the manila envelope I had been guarding for 8 months, and slid it across the heavy oak table. The judge reviewed the original notarized deed, transferring the estate directly into my name, completely bypassing any familial easements. He dismissed her injunction on the spot. My sister's face went completely pale. She practically lunged out of her chair, screaming that I had manipulated the bank, that she was entitled to the water rights, that I knew she was facing bankruptcy. She looked desperately at our mother in the gallery for backup, but my mother didn't step in this time. She stood up slowly, walked over to the defense table, and stared down at the attached historical survey. She traced her finger over the old, hand-drawn property lines my grandfather had sketched 50 years ago. She closed her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, "He always said the river belonged to you." My sister stood there in the echoing courtroom, completely stripped of her leverage, and for the first time in her life, she had absolutely nothing left to say. Some legacies aren't meant to be hijacked by whoever shouts the loudest. Some legacies belong to the person willing to quietly protect them, bleeding in secret until the dust finally settles. She never understood that difference, and that, in the end, was her absolute ruin.